You good for nothing. You look nothing like me or my wife.
In the village of Omok, beauty was a currency, and few possessed it like Zanila. From her youth, she had been spoken of in hushed admiration, graceful, kind, disciplined, and radiant in a way that drew eyes without effort. Many men sought her hand, not only because of her beauty, but because they believed such beauty would surely pass into the next generation. Among all who desired her, Rondu stood apart. He was bold, certain, and fearlessly devoted. Zanila chose him, and their marriage was celebrated across Omok with drums, laughter, and envy. Zanila conceived, and Rondu's joy knew no restraint. He walked through the village, boasting that his daughter would outshine the sun, that she would be the mirror of his mother's loveliness. Neighbors whispered excitedly, already imagining the child who would surely become Omok's pride. Zanila went into labor. Hours passed, marked by strained breaths and whispered encouragement. Finally, the child was born. Makena lifted the baby to clean and examine her, and the room fell into a stunned silence. The child's head was enormous, shockingly large, unmistakably so. At that moment, Rondu burst into the room, eager to claim his dream. His silence vanished the instant his eyes met the child. Rage replaced joy. "What is this thing you have given birth to?" he shouted, his voice sharp with disbelief and anger. Without waiting for an answer, Rondu stormed out. Zanila gathered her daughter into her arms, kissed her gently, and held her close. She named the child Mirela. Mirela grew, and with each passing year, so did the size of her head. It was impossible to hide, impossible to ignore. Her difference became her sentence. Children stared first, then whispered. Adults followed with knowing looks and cruel smiles. They called her Calabash Head. Mirela learned early to walk with her eyes lowered, to keep her thoughts quiet, to shrink herself into a world that refused to make space for her. Even market women paused mid-sale to watch her pass, shaking their heads as if her existence were a warning. At home, there was no kinder. Rondu never touched her, never spoke her name with warmth. When his gaze landed on her, it carried only disappointment, as though Mirela were a living mistake he could never erase. He referred to her as that girl, as if words themselves would betray him if he claimed her. Among Mirela's loudest tormentors was Prince Daliko, son of the crown elder. Bored by comfort and drunk on privilege, he found amusement in cruelty. Whenever Mirela crossed his path, he summoned laughter with mocking gestures, sending guards to drag her into the open just to humiliate her. Each insult carved deeper wounds. When words became unbearable, Mirela fled beyond the village paths into Ember Woods forest. There, beneath towering trees and quiet skies, the noise of Omok faded. Among roots and leaves, she found stillness. Beneath its tall canopies, no eyes mocked her shape, and no voices measured her worth. The forest breathed differently from Omok. Each time Mirela slipped between its trees, the tight knot in her chest loosened. At first, she came only to cry. She pressed her palms against tree bark, letting her tears fall into the soil where no one could laugh at them. But over time, grief gave way to curiosity. She noticed how certain leaves cooled her skin when crushed, how some roots stained her fingers and carried sharp, clean scents. When she caught herself on a thorn one afternoon, she pressed a soft green leaf against the wound. The discovery startled her. Day after day, Mirela returned, paying close attention. She observed which plants thrived in shade and which sought sunlight, which leaves eased pain and which burned the skin. She began to test small mixtures, careful and patient, creating simple life droughts and soothing pastes. Mirela dreamed of one thing above all else, a cure, something that might ease the weight she carried, something that could reduce her head and silence the laughter. Each failed attempt disappointed her, but she refused to stop learning. Then came the New Year celebration, welcoming the year with feasts. The drums circled filled with color, music, and joy. Mirela attended reluctantly, hoping to blend into the crowd. But Prince Daliko, restless and cruel, spotted her instantly. With a grin sharp as a blade, he climbs the platform and announces a contest, balancing apples on one's head. Laughter rippled when he called Mirela forward. Her hands trembled as she tried. Apples fell. Mockery exploded. Tears burning. Mirela fled back into the ember wood. The laughter still rang in her ears when another sound cut through it. A faint groan, low and strained. Startled, Mirela wiped her tears and listened. The sound came again. She followed it carefully and found a man sprawled on the forest floor. Blood streaked his face. His clothes torn as though the forest itself had attacked him. His eyes barely opened. For a moment, fear rooted her in place. Then, instinct took over. Mirela knelt beside him. "You are hurt," she said softly. The man tried to speak. He whispered that bandits had attacked him and left him for dead. Without hesitation, Mirela gathered leaves she recognized. She crushed them quickly, forming a thick paste, and pressed it gently onto his wounds. His breathing steadied. The man stared at her in disbelief. "The pain, it's fading." "I know green lore," she replied simply. "My name is Tarek," he said after a pause, managing a weak smile. She helped him to his feet and guided him towards Omok. When they reached her home, Rondu anger erupted. He refused the stranger's shelter, forcing Tarek to stay in the outer shed for a single week. Mirela tended to him daily. His wounds healed, but a deep scar remained across his face. Still, Tarek never once looked at Mirela with pity. Tarek recovered slowly, but when he finally stood on his own, the village noticed him, and not kindly. The scar across his face unsettled people. Whispers followed him wherever he went, just as they followed Mirela. With no home to return to and no memory of where he came from, Tarek took walk at the low fields, tiny peaks from dawn to dusk. It was honest labor, but in Omok, it marked him as lesser. Mirela became his constant companion. They walked together through narrow paths and spoke beneath the trees of Emberwood. With Tarek, Mirela laughed freely for the first time in her life. He listened without interrupting, never once flinching at her appearance. He spoke of his confusion, of the empty space where his past should have been, and Mirela understood that pain better than anyone. People mocked them openly. Calabash Head and the pig keeper, even Prince Daliko joined in, sneering whenever he passed, asking Mirela why she settled for scraps when she could beg for better. She answered with silence, but each word struck deep. Days later, disaster struck Omok. The village water turned foul. Sickness spread rapidly, taking the strong and weak alike. Panic consumed the people. Desperate and afraid, they turned to Mirela. The girl they once mocked now held their last hope. Mirela felt the weight of the villagers' desperation pressing against her chest. The same people who had called her Calabash Head now begged for her help. Lives were at stake, and she could not let anger guide her hands. She retreated to Emberwood's forest, gathering leaves, roots, and rare herbs she had spent years studying. Each plant had a purpose. Some cooled fever, some closed wounds, others soothed the aching body. With precision, she mixed portions, grind leaves into powder. Tarek walked silently beside her, chopping, boiling, and fetching, following every instruction, one by one. Mirela administered her remedies, calming cries, lowering temperatures, and healing cuts. She worked day and night, barely stopping to eat. The crown elder once so cruel toward her, watched in disbelief as his daughter, this Calabash Head, moved through the sick with unshakable confidence. By the fourth day, the tide began to turn. Fever broke, breathing steadied, and color returned to the villagers. Word spread that the girl they had mocked had saved their lives. Even Prince Daliko, who had delighted in humiliation, stared in silence, disbelief. He had never seen strength like hers, the quiet authority that demanded respect without a word. When the crown elder finally regained his strength, he looked at Mirela with new eyes. For the first time, she realized that her difference, her big head, was not a weakness. It was a gift, and in a village that had mocked her, she had become its savior. The village had barely recovered when the next trial arrived. Not from sickness, but from pride and power. Word spread quickly. Prince Daliko planned a public announcement, and everyone knew it would involve Mirela. The boy who had spent years mocking her now wore a mask of charm. But Mirela saw through it. That afternoon, the drum circle overflowed with villagers. Music and laughter marked the tension as Prince Daliko ascended the stage. He knelt dramatically, producing a ring that glittered in the sun. "Mirela," he declared, his voice loud enough for all to hear. "Will you be my wife?" Mirela, standing at the edge of the circle, felt the weight of every eye upon her. Her first instinct was disbelief. This was the boy who had turned her pain into sport. The villagers held their breaths. Yet, Mirela did not answer. She looked past the glittering ring. Her heart made the choice before her lips cooled. Slowly, she turned away from the prince and moved towards Sarek. Daliko's grin flattered. He had not expected rejection. Mirela reached Sarek. "You are the one who sees me," she said quietly, almost to herself. No prestige could match the strength of a heart that chose love over fear and mockery. For the first time, Mirela's difference, her big head, felt like power rather than shame. Prince Daliko's humiliation festered like a wound, and he refused to let it go. Behind the high walls of the Redstone Court, he whispered to his guards, plotting vengeance. Mirela's choice had struck at his pride, and now he would act. Days later, news reached Mirela's. Tarek had been taken by the prince's men. Her heart froze. The man who had healed her spirit, who had been her refuge and friend, was now in chains. Without a word, moving like wind across the village. Her mind sharp, her resolve unshakable. Tarek sat in a holding cell, bruised but defiant, eyes scanning for Mirela. When she appeared, he tried to rise, but the guards held him back. "You shouldn't have come," Daliko sneered. Stepping forward, his arrogance filled the room. Mirela's voice was steady. "I see. I will not let you harm him." Daliko laughed, cruel and empty. "Then perhaps you will witness him punished." Thinking quickly, Mirela revealed a small vial she had hidden under her sleeve. "Drink this," she whispered to Tarek. "Trust me, and all will be well." Tarek hesitated, then drank. Moments later, his body went limp, lifeless. But Mirela's heart did not falter. She had prepared for this. Carefully, she lifted him and carried him out through the hidden passage she had discovered months before, bypassing the prince's guards. Daliko's fury roared behind them, echoing through the palace halls. "Stop them! Do not let her escape with him alive." I am the ready writer, and every story hides a truth.